Hello and welcome to What the F*** Just Happened Today, your essential guide to the daily shock and awe in national politics. I'm Joe Amditis. Let's get to it. It's Tuesday, March 15th, 2022. Welcome to day 420. The White House will wind down a COVID-19 program that pays to test, treat, and vaccinate people who don't have health insurance unless Congress approves more funding. The Biden administration also warned that the United States will soon run out of funding for future COVID-19 booster shots, new treatments, and testing efforts if the spending legislation remains stuck in Congress. Last week, lawmakers refused to include $22.5 billion in pandemic funding in the government spending bill because of a dispute over whether $7 billion should come from funding that's already allocated to states. As a result, uninsured Americans will no longer be able to submit claims for tests or COVID treatments starting next week. The government will also cut supplies of monoclonal antibody treatments to states by 30% after canceling an order for hundreds of thousands of treatments. Quote, "We want to be clear, waiting to provide funding until we're in a worse spot with the virus will be too late," said a senior administration official. Importantly, when you consider the cost of all these treatments compared to the cost of what we will prevent in terms of hospitalizations, death, and damage to our healthcare system and our economy, it is not a close call, end quote. Meanwhile, Joe Biden signed into law a $1.5 trillion government spending bill that will provide $13.6 billion in additional military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine. The bill also funds the government for the current fiscal year. Biden said, quote, "With this bill, we're going to send a message to the American people, a strong message that Democrats and Republicans actually come together and get something done right now, and to fulfill our most basic responsibilities to keep the government open and running for the American people," end quote. The funding legislation, however, does not include supplemental coronavirus relief that was originally included. Moving on, the Russian Foreign Ministry sanctioned Joe Biden, as well as Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, and other top U.S. officials in response to sanctions imposed by Washington on Russian officials. Other officials who were sanctioned include White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, Joe Biden's son, Hunter, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, and CIA Director William Burns. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki shrugged off the announcement from the Kremlin, joking that the sanctions wouldn't have much of an impact because, quote, "President Biden is a junior, so they may have sanctioned his dad. May he rest in peace," end quote. Hillary Clinton also ridiculed the sanctions on her, tweeting, quote, "I want to thank the Russian Academy for this Lifetime Achievement Award," end quote. Back home, a 9-page document found in the possession of the former leader of the Proud Boys outlined a plan to surveil and storm government buildings around the Capitol on January 6, 2021. The document was titled 1776 Returns, and it was broken into 5 sections: infiltrate, execution, distract, occupy, and sit in. And it recommends recruiting at least 50 people to enter 7 government buildings on January 6th for the purposes of, quote, "causing trouble," end quote. The document, however, does not specifically mention attacking the Capitol building itself. A federal judge ordered Enrique Tarrio, the former leader, to remain jailed pending trial on charges that he conspired with followers to obstruct the certification of Biden's Electoral College victory. Meanwhile, the wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas attended the January 6th Stop the Steal rally to protest Biden's election. Ginny Thomas said she attended the rally in the morning, but got cold and left before Trump addressed the crowd and before a pro-Trump mob broke into the Capitol. In December, Ginny Thomas was among a group of conservative leaders who co-signed a letter criticizing the work of the bipartisan House committee as, quote, "overly partisan political persecution," end quote, and calling for House Republicans to expel Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger from their conference for joining the committee investigating the attacks. The following month, the Supreme Court rejected Trump's effort to block a congressional subpoena for White House records related to the certification of the 2020 presidential election and the January 6th insurrection. Instead of recusing himself from the case, Justice Clarence Thomas was the only justice to say that he would grant Trump's request. Moving on, Joe Manchin, who has taken more money in political donations from fossil fuel interests than any other U.S. senator, said that he is very reluctant to see the proliferation of electric vehicles. Manchin said he has a hard time understanding why the federal government would invest in a network of electric car charging stations which Biden has championed as part of his plan to grow the EV market in order to tackle the climate crisis. And finally, a Democratic super PAC accused Trump of violating campaign finance laws by spending his existing political funds on a 2024 presidential run without declaring himself a candidate. Federal rules require those who raise or spend more than $5,000 in support of a presidential campaign to register with the FEC. And in the polls, Wall Street Journal says 52% of Americans don't expect Joe Biden to run for re-election in 2024, while 29% believe that he'll pursue a second term, and 19% say they're undecided about Biden's future. Among Democrats, 41% say they believe Biden will run again, while 32% think he won't. And Yahoo News says 39% of Americans now approve of Biden's handling of the situation with Russia and Ukraine, up from 34% 2 weeks ago. His approval on Russia and Ukraine among independents also climbed 12 points to 38%. That's all for now. You can find the links and sources for all of these stories on the main website. And as always, visit whatthefjusthappenedtoday.com for the latest news and headlines. Until next time, I'm Joe Amditas.